There are scenes that make you jump. And then there are scenes that follow you home, the ones that crawl under your skin and build a nest, leaving you wide awake at 3 a.m., second-guessing that shadow in the corner of your room. These aren't just jump scares, these are masterclasses in dread. Today, we're counting down the 15 most unsettling scenes in horror movie history. The moments that prove true terror is what you don't always see. These are the cinematic fragments that burrow into your subconscious, the ones that rewire your brain and leave a permanent stain. We're not talking about cheap thrills that startle you for a second and are gone the next. We're talking about psychological devastation. We're talking about scenes so profoundly disturbing, they make you question what you're watching, blurring the line between entertainment and genuine trauma. So dim the lights, check the locks, and get ready to revisit the moments that cinema decided we should never forget. Takashi Miike's Audition is a film that masterfully lulls you into a false sense of security. For the first hour it feels like a gentle if slightly sad romantic drama. A lonely widower, Aoyama, agrees to a shady plan: hold a fake movie audition to find a new wife. He's immediately enchanted by Asami, a quiet, beautiful former ballerina with a mysterious past. The first half is a slow, careful courtship. The second half is a freefall into one of the most infamous and punishing finales ever put on film. The horror of the climax doesn't come from a sudden burst of violence, but from its methodical, almost serene cruelty. Feeling betrayed by Aoyama, Asami decides to serve her own twisted form of justice. The scene opens with Aoyama waking up paralyzed on the floor of his own apartment. Asami, dressed in leather, calmly explains her process. "Kiri, Kiri, Kiri, Kiri," she whispers, which translates to deeper, 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 as she pushes long acupuncture needles into his flesh, one just under his tongue and others ringing his eyes. What makes this so disturbing is the sound design and the chillingly calm performance of Eihi Shiina as Asami. Every push of the needle has a sickening squelch. There's no frantic music, just the quiet of the room and Asami's soft, almost loving whispers. This isn't a frenzied attack, it's a meticulous artistic expression of pain. The horror peaks when she pulls out a piano wire and with a small, satisfied smile, uses it to saw off his foot. The scene forces you into Aoyama's position, paralyzed, helpless, and forced to endure an act of intimate, deliberate, and unending agony. Home invasion is a deep, primal fear, and few films have exploited that vulnerability with the chilling minimalism of Brian Bertino's The Strangers. The film's power comes from what it doesn't show, generating terror from silence and stillness. So, after a failed marriage proposal, James and Kristen return to a secluded vacation home. Their emotional turmoil is thick in the air when there's a knock at the door. A strange woman asks, "Is Tamara home?" From that moment on, their sanctuary is a playground for three masked tormentors. There are plenty of unnerving moments, but one simple background shot truly captures the film's nihilistic horror. While James is out, Kristen is alone in the house. We see her in a wide shot, and as she smokes with her back to the hallway, the man in the mask emerges from the shadows. He doesn't move. He doesn't make a sound. He just stands there for an agonizingly long time, a silent predator before melting back into the darkness. Kristen never even knew. This moment weaponizes the camera frame to create dread. We see the threat that the protagonist can't, and all we want to do is scream at the screen. The fear comes from the total violation of safety. The walls are meaningless. The enemy is already inside, patient and utterly malevolent. This quiet terror builds to the film's infamous ending, when a bloodied Kristen finally asks why they're doing this. The response is simple, delivered with a chilling lack of emotion. Because you were home. The absence of a motive is the true horror. It's random, senseless violence, a concept far more terrifying than any monster. The found footage anthology V/H/S gave us a series of raw, lo-fi horror shorts, but it was the opening segment, Amateur Night, that left the biggest scar. The story is deceptively sleazy. A group of obnoxious bros plan to pick up women, get them back to a motel, and secretly film the encounter with a spy cam and a pair of glasses. Their plan takes a weird turn when they meet Lily, a strange quiet woman who seems both vulnerable and unnervingly intense. Her only repeated phrase is, "I like you." The tension in the motel room is almost unbearable. Lily's behavior gets more and more bizarre. Her movements are jerky, her eyes unnaturally wide. Watching through the spy glasses, we know something is deeply wrong long before the guys do. The scene is a powder keg of predatory male energy and otherworldly strangeness, and we're just waiting for the explosion. When two of the men try to force themselves on her, she finally shows them who she really is. With a guttural scream, she transforms, her skin pales, her mouth widens into a fanged maw, and her hands become claws. The found footage format, so often a gimmick, becomes the scene's greatest strength. The chaos is captured in frantic, disorienting flashes as Lily brutally slaughters the men. The horror is twofold: first, the grimy, realistic setup of a potential sexual assault, and second, the shocking pivot into supernatural carnage. The final shot, of the last man being carried away by a winged, demonic Lily, still whispering, "I like you," is a perfect fusion of affection and absolute terror. Robert Eggers' The Witch uses atmosphere as a weapon. It's less a traditional horror movie and more a meticulously researched Puritan nightmare, a folktale brought to life with suffocating authenticity. The film follows a family exiled from their New England plantation, forced to survive on the edge of a dark, menacing forest. When their newborn son vanishes, paranoia and religious hysteria tear them apart, as they start to suspect one of their own is a witch. The film is a slow burn, building dread through whispered prayers and mounting suspicion. But the folktale horror becomes terrifyingly real when the oldest son Caleb stumbles upon the witch's hovel. Lost and alone, Caleb sees a small cottage. A beautiful, alluring young woman in a red cloak emerges, and the score swells with an eerie, seductive melody. Steeped in the film's grim folklore, we know this is a trap. We watch, helpless, as a mesmerized Caleb walks toward her for a kiss. The terror here is all in the editing. Just as their lips are about to touch, the camera cuts to a close-up of a withered, gnarled hand closing around the back of Caleb's head. We never see the beautiful woman and the hag in the same frame. Is it a glamour? A trick of the mind? The film doesn't explain, leaving the evil ambiguous. It's a moment that perfectly blends seductive beauty with grotesque horror, getting to the heart of ancient fairy tales where temptation and damnation are one and the same. We don't see what happens next, but we don't need to. The image of that decaying hand is enough to confirm that the evil in the woods is very real. Michael Haneke's Funny Games is, honestly, an assault on the audience. It's not just a home invasion film, it's a brutal critique of our hunger for violence as entertainment. So, two polite, well-dressed young men, Peter and Paul, show up at a family's lake house and through a series of increasingly sinister games, take them hostage and torture them. The film is famous for breaking the fourth wall, with the killer, Paul, actually speaking directly to us, making the audience complicit in the horror. The most audacious and infuriatingly brilliant moment is the remote control scene. After enduring just unspeakable suffering, the mother, Anna, finally gets the upper hand. She grabs a shotgun and blasts one of the intruders, Peter, to pieces. For the first time, we feel a rush of catharsis, a glimmer of hope. This is what we expect from movies. The hero fights back, good triumphs over evil. And then, Paul calmly finds the TV remote, points it at us, and rewinds the entire scene. We watch the footage spool backward, blood vanishes from the wall, the TV reassembles itself, and Peter is alive again. Paul stops Anna from grabbing the gun and the game continues on his terms. Haneke robs us of our cinematic comfort food. He's telling us directly that we are not in control, that the rules of storytelling and justice just don't apply here. Paul isn't just a character, he's the director, and he's torturing us as much as he is the family. It creates a unique kind of dread, the dread of knowing you are utterly powerless. Ari Aster followed the dark, claustrophobic horror of Hereditary with its sun-drenched, psychedelic opposite, Midsommar. The film follows Danny, a young woman reeling from a horrific family tragedy, who joins her emotionally distant boyfriend on a trip to a remote Swedish commune for their Midsommar festival. What starts as a picturesque retreat slowly reveals itself to be the home of a pagan cult with deeply disturbing traditions. The film's major turning point, when the mask of civility slips to reveal the horror underneath, is the Ättestupa ritual. Under a bright, cloudless sky, the community gathers at the base of a huge cliff. Two elderly members are led to the top. The commune's elder explains this is a great honor, a voluntary sacrifice to complete their life cycle at age 72. The outsiders watch in a mix of confusion and curiosity, which quickly curdles into abject horror. The first elder jumps, hitting the rocks below with a sickening, graphic thud. The horror is amplified by the daylight. There are no shadows to hide in. But it's the second jump that makes the scene truly unsettling. The old man lands on his feet, shattering his legs, but he's still alive, screaming in agony. Without missing a beat, cult members approach him with a large wooden mallet and ceremonially crush his skull. What's truly disturbing is the cult's reaction. As the outsiders scream and vomit, the Harga wail in unison, not in sadness but in a ritualistic imitation of the dying man's pain. This is the moment Danny and we realize that these aren't just quirky traditions. This is a completely alien moral universe and they are trapped in it. David Robert Mitchell's It Follows is built on a simple, terrifying premise: a sexually transmitted curse. After a sexual encounter, the protagonist, Jay, is relentlessly pursued by a silent, shape-shifting entity that only she can see. It can look like anyone, but it never stops walking toward her. The film is brilliant at using empty space and long, panning shots to create a constant, gnawing paranoia. The threat could be anyone, anywhere. The film is full of creeping dread, but no moment is as startlingly terrifying as the appearance of the tall man. Jay is at home, trying to explain the unexplainable to her friends. The entity appears outside as a friend, Yara, approaching the house. Her friends, seeing nothing, open the door to prove she's imagining things. Yara is standing there, but as the camera pans back, an impossibly tall, gaunt man with black empty eyes emerges from the hallway's darkness behind her. He has to stoop to get through the door frame, his movements slow and deliberate. The sheer physical wrongness of this figure is what makes the scene so effective. It's not just a person, it's a violation of human form. The fact that only Jay and the audience can see him creates a profound sense of isolation. Her friends are completely oblivious to the towering monster that has just walked into their home. The entity's choice of this form is also thought to be deeply personal, possibly representing Jay's dead father, adding psychological torment to the physical threat. The tall man is on screen for only a few seconds, but his image is seared into your memory forever. We are deep in the abyss now, and it only gets more disturbing from here. Before we continue our descent, we have to ask, what do you think? Which horror movie scene still haunts your nightmares? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one, and we want to know what crawls under your skin. And if you're finding this analysis of dread as fascinating as we do, consider subscribing and ringing that notification bell. We're building a community for people who appreciate that true horror is more than just a jump scare. Now let's get back to the darkness. In 1999, the Blair Witch Project didn't just scare audiences, it created a cultural phenomenon. Its found footage marketing was so effective that many people went into the theater believing they were about to watch the real, recovered tapes of 3 student filmmakers who vanished in the Maryland woods. This perceived authenticity is the engine of the film's terror, which ends in one of the most debated and terrifying finales in horror history. After days of being lost, tormented by unseen forces, and psychologically broken, Heather and Mike discover a derelict house in the woods, the supposed home of the serial killer Rustin Parr. They hear the disembodied screams of their missing friend Josh coming from inside. Mike runs into the house and Heather follows, her camera capturing a frantic, nauseating journey through the decaying building and down into the claustrophobic basement. The final moments are pure, distilled dread. Heather's camera sweeps across the stone walls and for a fleeting second, captures Mike standing in the corner facing the wall, completely still. Then Heather screams, and her camera falls, the screen goes black, The film ends. The horror here is rooted in the local legend the students were investigating. Rustin Parr would make one of his victims stand in the corner while he murdered the other. Mike is in the corner. Heather just entered the room. The implication is sickeningly clear. By showing us nothing, the film forces our own imaginations to conjure the absolute worst, and that's precisely what makes it so terrifying. Ridley Scott's Alien is, honestly, a perfect film. A fusion of sci-fi and haunted house horror that set a new standard for both genres. For the first half, the tension is this slow, creeping burn. The crew of the Nostromo investigates a distress signal from a desolate moon, where Executive Officer Kane is attacked by a parasitic facehugger. But then, he wakes up. He seems fine. The crew, relieved, sits down for one last meal before going back into cryo-sleep. They're laughing and joking. For a moment it really feels like the danger has passed. This is what makes the chest-burster scene so brilliant. It erupts from a moment of calm. Kane starts to cough, then convulses violently on the table. His crewmates hold him down, thinking it's a seizure, until his shirt stains with blood. The fabric rips, and a small, phallic, blood-drenched creature bursts out of his chest, screeches and scurries away into the ship. The scene is legendary not just for its shock value, but because the cast's reactions are largely genuine. They knew a creature would emerge, but they weren't prepared for the sheer amount of blood and gore. Beyond that, the scene is deeply unsettling thematically. It was conceived as a terrifying depiction of male violation and forced birth, a violent inversion of horror tropes. It's a moment of body horror so potent and so unexpected that it's been burned into our collective consciousness. It's the moment the film reveals its true, monstrous nature, and horror cinema was never the same. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is, a labyrinth of psychological dread where the true horror is as much about a family's disintegration as it is about the ghosts haunting the Overlook Hotel. The hotel is just full of iconic, terrifying imagery, but no sequence is as surreal, seductive, and sickening as Jack Torrance's visit to the Forbidden Room 237. His son Danny has already encountered something there, but Jack, descending into madness, decides to investigate himself. He enters the room's mint green bathroom and sees a beautiful naked young woman in the tub. She rises, walks toward him, and they embrace in a passionate kiss. It's a moment of seduction, the hotel's corrupting influence made flesh. But as Jack looks in the mirror over her shoulder, he sees he's not holding a beautiful woman. He's embracing a rotting elderly corpse, her skin green and sloughing off her bones. She lets out a horrifying, cackling laugh as he recoils in terror. The scene is a masterpiece of slow-burn, surreal horror. It doesn't rely on a jump scare but on a sickening, gradual reveal. The horror is in the transformation, the clash of beauty and decay, desire and revulsion. It represents the point of no return for Jack. He has been fully seduced by the hotel's evil, and any hope for his sanity is gone. The scene's ambiguity, is she a ghost, a hallucination, only makes it more unsettling. It's a dream that curdles into a nightmare right before our eyes. John Carpenter's The Thing is honestly a symphony of paranoia and practical effects. In a desolate Antarctic research station, a group of men face a shape-shifting alien that can perfectly imitate any life form it absorbs. The real horror is the crushing paranoia. No one can trust anyone. This tension boils over in the defibrillator scene, one of the most grotesquely inventive sequences in horror history. One of the men, Norris, seems to have a heart attack. The medic, Dr. Copper, prepares to use a defibrillator. The air is thick with tension. The other men watch, MacReady holding a flamethrower, ready to torch anything that reveals itself. As Copper places the paddles on Norris's chest and shouts, "Clear!" the scene explodes into beautiful practical effects chaos. Norris's chest splits open into a giant tooth-filled maw that chomps down, severing Copper's arms at the elbows. The effect was achieved using a fiberglass body and hydraulically powered jaws with a real double amputee and a mask to make the moment feel shockingly real. But the horror doesn't stop. As the men stare in stunned terror, Norris's head detaches from his body, melts to the floor, sprouts spider legs, and tries to scuttle away. You gotta be F***ing kidding. It's a moment of sublime, grotesque imagination that proves this creature is beyond all human comprehension, a high watermark for biological terror. Ari Aster's debut feature, Hereditary, is less a horror movie and more a 2-hour panic attack. It's a film about grief, trauma, and the terrifying idea that we have no control over our own lives, that we're just puppets in a malevolent design. The film is littered with disturbing moments, but the one that serves as the story's inciting incident is so shocking, so sudden, and so unflinchingly brutal that it leaves you in a state of stunned silence. The Graham family is already unraveling. The teenage son, Peter, is forced by his mother to take his strange younger sister, Charlie, to a party. Charlie, who has a severe nut allergy, eats cake containing nuts and goes into anaphylactic shock. Peter rushes her to the car and speeds toward the hospital. Charlie, unable to breathe, leans her head out of the window for air. Distracted, Peter swerves to avoid an animal on the road. The camera stays locked on Peter's horrified face. We hear a sickening, wet thud. We don't see the impact, but we know exactly what happened. Charlie has been decapitated by a telephone pole. Aster then holds the shot on Peter, who sits in the car in catatonic shock for what feels like an eternity. He doesn't scream, he doesn't cry, he just drives home, parks the car and gets into bed, leaving his sister's headless body in the back for his mother to find the next morning. The horror isn't just the unseen violence, it's the prolonged, silent aftermath. It's watching a teenage boy's psyche completely shatter in a single, unforgiving moment. Gore Verbinski's American remake of the Japanese classic Ringu terrified an entire generation and made us all look at our TVs with a new sense of dread. The premise is a modern urban legend. Watch a cursed videotape, get a phone call where a ghostly voice whispers, 7 days, and then you die. The film follows journalist Rachel Keller as she races to solve the mystery and save herself and her son. The #1 spot on this list belongs to the film's climax, a scene that so perfectly weaponizes the barrier between the movie world and our own reality that it remains one of the most effective scares ever filmed. Rachel's ex, Noah, is alone in his apartment. It has been 7 days. His television switches on by itself, showing the statusy image of the well from the cursed video. He stares, mesmerized, as a figure crawls out of the well. But this time, it doesn't stop. The figure, the long-haired, waterlogged girl Samara, keeps crawling right out of the television screen and into his living room. This is the ultimate violation. The one safe space we have when watching a horror movie, the screen itself, has been breached. The monster is no longer contained. It has physically entered our world. Samara's unnatural, jerky movements are deeply unsettling. She moves like a broken doll that doesn't obey the laws of physics. Noah scrambles backward in pure terror, but there is nowhere to run. The last thing we see is a close-up of Samara's water-wrinkled face, one malevolent eye staring out from behind her wet hair, before the screen cuts to Noah's gray, terror-contorted corpse. It's a scene that taps into a primal fear of the supernatural invading our safe, mundane spaces, and for weeks after seeing it you couldn't help but glance nervously at your own TV. And there you have it. 15 moments that prove the most effective horror isn't about what makes you jump, but what makes you feel. These scenes are more than just scares. They're cinematic experiences that dig deep into the human psyche. They linger because they disrupt our sense of safety, our understanding of reality, and our faith in happy endings. From the nihilistic silence of the strangers to the screen-shattering arrival of Samara, these are the moments that define unsettling horror. They are the reason we check the locks, the reason we hesitate before turning off the lights, and the reason we will forever be fascinated by the power of a terrifying story. What did we miss? What scenes should have made the list? The conversation continues in the comments. Thanks for watching and try to get some sleep tonight.